Yay.
Janelle, how do you get back to the mode where I can view your screen?
What was this? Was that Meg, sorry?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to get back to the mode where I can see your screen.
I'm sharing a screen, so it should just be like coaching mental strength at the moment. There should be like near the top a bunch of different pictures. There's one that has like 9 dots and one with 2.
Top right, maybe.
And then one with a big square. Found it. Cool. Okay. We're up to 31. Surprisingly daunting number. I'm happy to just kick off, and if you have questions, message them, or if it's super urgent and you feel like you won't be satisfied if it doesn't get answered immediately, unmute and ask it. Otherwise, if you want your question to be anonymous for any reason, Facebook message me or Mara, and one of us can ask it on your behalf. Otherwise, my unstable internet connection will hopefully last through this. So, mental strength coaching. Thanks, Mara, for having me present this. This session is based on my own coaching experiences from various failures and mistakes that have resulted in learnings along the way. It covers my own coaching philosophy, and people will have very different ideas on coaching. So this is just what's worked for Berries, I think, but it's not necessarily going to work for everyone. The basis of my mental strength philosophy is that you have to push people for them to build mental strength, and you have to be there to support them when they fail. The key thing is that they have to try. Blueberries has previously identified mental strength as something that we needed to work on, so we made it a focus for this season, and I think we really developed quite a lot along the way. So when we say mental strength, what do I mean? Defining the term. So this is a quote from Pete Carroll, coach of the Seattle Seahawks, and I'm sure you guys are all literate, so I'll just leave you to read that one. But the basis of it is mental strength, when I'm talking about it in this, is grit. It's your never give up attitude. It's your willingness to keep trying and keep pushing no matter what the odds are or how difficult it is. So again,
one Pixar isn't going to the wash.
Someone have a question, sorry. No, cool, we'll keep going. But yeah, when I'm talking about mental strength, I'm talking about building grit and building resilience and building kind of that can-do attitude. So my approach to mental strength, push the comfort zone. You do not learn if you are not pushed. No one has ever gained mental strength from just sitting happily within their comfort zone. Second step is to work with purpose. Have a goal and have a process for achieving that goal. The process should be your focus, not an outcome. So your goal shouldn't be to win A or beat Y. It should be about achieving something that's actually within your control. Third step of my approach is having a growth mindset. So that means you're in control of your own development, and you believe that you have the ability to learn things through practice. This is changing the focus from people's natural ability and natural talent to what they can learn and what they can develop themselves. And the fourth part of my approach is that all of this has to happen within a supportive and positive environment where people feel comfortable pushing their boundaries, potentially failing in front of a team. You can't make people feel stupid for failing, because otherwise they'll just stop trying and they'll stop pushing themselves. So the ultimate goal of my approach with mental strength is to give people the confidence to execute skills and perform at any time, particularly when they are under pressure. So if we look at types of coaching, what we're aiming for in this is wise coaching. I've renamed authoritative coaching to wise because otherwise it gets confused with authoritarian coaching. Not two good things to confuse. So I strive to be wise in coaching. I don't consistently achieve it by any means, but I think it's a daily struggle that coaches are worthwhile pushing towards. So if we're looking at this graph, there's two axes. There's demanding to undemanding, unsupportive to supportive. If you look at people who coach within the undemanding, unsupportive box, you end up with neglectful coaching, and there's essentially no point in the coach being there. They have no expectation of their players, and they are not supporting their players to learn. If you get into the supportive but undemanding, this is often what you'll see in coaches for really beginner teams, where, especially with a sport like Frisbee, people are just stoked that you turned up. Like, you have a team, this is wonderful. And that's the permissive side, where if you're in a super beginner phase and you literally just want people to turn up, that's where I think permissive coaching can be really valuable, because it's all about just breeding people's enthusiasm, and sometimes they're more there for the social side. What you sometimes see in very competitive clubs is the authoritarian style of coaching, where you're very demanding, you have really high expectations of the people in your club, but you're not supporting them in their development. People have their boxes, they play within their boxes, and they're not really pushed to grow outside of that comfort zone. This can be supportive for people who are very competitive against others, or for people who are very self-motivated, or people who've turned up with a lot of natural grit. But otherwise, I feel like it doesn't get the best out of everybody. So this is, I think, we should aim for authoritative or wise coaching, where you are both demanding of your players that they push themselves, that they try and learn, but also supportive in understanding that when you're pushing yourself, you're not always going to succeed, and actually the failing along the way is the most valuable part, where you learn that grit, that resilience, and you learn to keep trying new things, because ultimately that's the best way to develop. If you just keep working on it, and resilience and that grit, mental strength is where you get that. So I think when you're thinking about how you interact with players, managing to be both demanding and supportive is where you'll actually get a lot of value out. This model of coaching is actually taken from a parenting model that was developed by Angela Duckworth, a psychologist, but she translates it to coaching quite a lot, and so I've stolen it. But I like it as a framework to think about skills. But yeah, if you have this as a basis for how you think about coaching, it can be a daily struggle that you can continue to improve on. So in terms of implementing a mental strength plan, before you start just pushing players to be the best they can be and supporting them through that, we need to put a team in the right mindset to actually be able to build their own mental strength. So I'm going to talk through how mentally, I think I'm getting some spammed Facebook messages here. Thanks. I'm talking through mentally how to put the team in the right headspace to push their own mental strength. So in terms of implementation, getting a team ready to build mental strength, I think there's 4 steps. Firstly, building a strong team culture that prioritizes mental strength. Secondly, having clear goal settings. This gets everybody on the same page and working towards the same goal. Thirdly, getting buy-in from the players. And fourth, having a supportive environment. So going through each of these in turn, we look at the team mindset. So to start with, you just need to build a team culture. Once you've selected your players for your season, you need to work out how to make them into a team and get them on the same page. I think creating a team is largely about making your own in-group and having a bunch of things that you do certain ways that people can buy into. Barry's examples, Barry's run hill sprints. We've got a bunch of stupid dances. We have a random collection of cheers. We eat dumplings. We like to match our kit items, and we put glitter on our face. Like, none of these things individually are actually important to playing good Frisbee, but doing those things as a team makes you a Barry. So once you have all of those structures, all of those random things, you have your team culture, and you can pick kind of whatever you want, but the result of all of that is that the guys teams in Auckland like to joke that Barry is a cult, and you know what? That's entirely by design. We have a whole bunch of things that we do together because that makes us a really strong unit and a really strong team to start with, and forms the base that you can build mental strength on top of. It doesn't necessarily make anybody in the team a better player, but it makes us an in-group and bonds people to each other. Importantly, within teams, if you're wanting to build mindset, it's very difficult to do this if there is an in-group and also an out-group. So if you have like 2 rounds of selections where half the team makes it and half the team is selected at a later date, or if you have a really tight-knit friend group from high school that doesn't socialize with the rest of the team, it can be very difficult to get that real unity, that real group feel. So as a coach, if you identify that there are those kind of groups within your team, do try and find ways kind of homogenize across the whole team. Not everyone has to be besties, and not everyone an in-group and an out-group within a team if you want to have a strong team mindset. It's just my opinion. Secondly, once you have your team culture that you have decided on, you need to get onto goal setting. Goal setting is a whole separate topic in itself, so I'm going to just as it relates to strength. Goals should have a long-term focus if they're going to passion and perseverance towards longer-term focuses. Should be based on processes, not results. For example, some of Barry's goals are everybody needs to know all of the plays. Everybody has to be comfortable in the handler space. And those are things that regardless of the outcome in a game, everyone can work towards that, and everyone can know at the end of the season whether that's been achieved or not. And none of that depends on wins and losses. So have your goals, and then as a team, it gives you something to work towards in trainings. And goals essentially I view as the glue that holds people together, keeps them accountable to each other, and can kind of form the basis for positive peer pressure where you kind of encourage each other. So, yes, I think third step is getting buy-in from everybody. I like this picture because it very much illustrates what goes wrong with teamwork. If you are not all rowing in the same direction, building a team will be infinitely harder. You have to build mindset as a whole. If people are rowing in different directions from the start, it's just going to be a nightmare. I like the idea of building people who want to compete as a team. Compete, Barry's have been spammed with this previously, sorry. But compete's actually from a Latin root word, and its literal definition is striving together. So compete has nothing to do with winning and losing, and equally it hasn't got anything to do with just physically turning up. Compete is about a joint effort to strive towards an objective. So talking about mental strength, building people who are competitors, who will strive together as a team, I think is really important. So getting everyone to buy in to the fact that they want to improve personally and that everyone else in the team wants to improve. The fourth part of getting your team ready to build their mental strength is having a supportive environment. So this is where the positive peer pressure comes in. Dan Chambliss is a really interesting sociologist. He's got some great writing, and he's done a lot of studying of competitive athletes. So his theory is there's a hard way and an easy way to build mental strength and to build grit. The hard way is to just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and the easy way is to find a whole bunch of people who are really, really good at it and just act like them, essentially. He studied swimmers, and he was amazed because swimmers would get up at 4 a.m. and they'd go to the pool and they'd swim for hours and hours, and he was like, wow, these people are incredible. How do they do this? And then he looked at them longer and he's like, wait, everybody they know gets up at 4 a.m. and goes to the pool and swims for hours and hours. And so at that point, it's not so much an individual person's effort, it's the combined effort of everyone I know is doing this. So I'm going to train as hard, I'm going to work as hard, and I'm going to be supported by everybody in my team to keep working. So it's that kind of group mentality. This can also help if one person is lacking the self-discipline of the mental strength. They can essentially be pulled up by the rest of the team until they are able to achieve that themselves. So the reciprocal effect of team building and the strength that you can get from others in your team is really important. And so as a fourth part of getting a team ready to build their mental strength, I think having everyone in that idea where you need to support everybody else in your team is really important. So now we have our building blocks of a team who's ready to push their mental strength. We can get into how to actually grow your mental strength. So no one has ever gained mental strength by sitting in their comfort zone. If I go to training and I throw 100 IO backhands, which is my absolute favorite throw, I might at the end of that have a better IO backhand, but I will not have changed my mental strength at all, because that is already within my grasp. So I can achieve that, and I'm not pushing myself to do that. What you want to get is push people from that comfort zone all the way out into that growth zone. That's what we're trying to push to. How you push people through the fear zone is with all of the support that you have from the team, that wise coaching, where you tell them, I'm going to push you, I'm going to have really high expectations, but if you fail, that's okay. The key thing is that you try and you improve, and you get better every time you do it. So people need to be pushed from their comfort zone into a growth zone where they find a purpose, where they try and achieve their goals and they conquer various objectives that they can't do, not things that they're already comfortable doing. Things that you can do this, it's essentially trial and error. Build situations where you essentially know players are detrimental, players are in a situation where they have to adapt, and that can become those push moments. So examples are, if you tell a team when it's not windy that they can only throw a zone on defense, they just have to throw a zone. And yeah, it's going to be difficult, but they have to do that, and they just have to work through it, and their zone will improve from that. Or you play uneven teams, so one team has 7 and one team has 6, and that team that has 6, that's their push option. That's their ability, their chance to try and move into the growth zone and have to adapt more. When you're pushing people outside their comfort zones, they will make errors, but that's when they can learn. And when they achieve, when they have those moments when they suddenly get it, that builds the confidence. And then having been pushed outside their comfort zone previously and having had to learn on the fly previously helps them adapt to those kind of situations when they turn up in a game. And that's the mental strength building part. That ability to adapt, that ability to push, that ability to take yourself further even when you think you should lose or you know you're expected to lose, and to push through that, that's the mental strength building side. And as long as people are in a situation where they're fine failing, where they know that their team will support them if they fail, you can push them a lot further than you otherwise would be able to. But yeah, that's the crux of mental strength building, is take people well outside their comfort zone, support them through failure, and then do it again and again and again until they just keep trying and keep pushing harder. The other side of this is when you're giving people feedback, because when people are outside their comfort zone, they're going to fail more. That's fine, that's expected. But how you talk to them when they're going through that is important. So the key thing in a growth mindset is that you don't praise people for what they've turned up with. So you don't praise people for, oh, you're just naturally talented, or man, you've always just been this good, or you were born gifted, because no one learns, no one is pushed when they're not making mistakes. You praise people for the effort that they're putting in, the strategies they put in place, progress, hard work, persistence, rising to the challenge and learning from their mistakes. The key to this is that everybody needs to be pushed, regardless of the natural talent that they turn up with. Naturally talented people who just turn up and are praised for being naturally talented are not encouraged to push themselves. Similarly, untalented people who just see a coach praising people who have turned up with natural talent can be disheartened, because they think, I'm not naturally talented, I'm never going to get to that level, and they tend to not push themselves as hard. Alternatively, if everything's about, you're working so hard, I can see the effort that you're putting in, I can see the persistence, just keep working at it, you will get better. And that can be for people who are viewed as naturally talented and not naturally talented. Everybody is encouraged to keep pushing themselves, and it's when you push yourselves that you actually get to that mental strength side of things. So in your coaching vocabulary, and this I find really, really hard, because I have a lot of people on Berries who I view as naturally talented, and it's a consistent thing to have to praise them for the effort and not what I view as just the assets they turned up with. But I think it is really important to just be consistent in that language when you can. Pairing with that on language is the power of yet. Working towards goals is really hard, and mental strength is built when you're persevering. So the concept of being, you can't do it yet, you don't know it yet. For Berries, we use next time. The idea being like, oh, that throw didn't work this time, but it will work next time. And so you'll see a lot of the time people will make an error and they'll say themselves next time, or their teammates will say to them next time. It pushes people's minds forwards into the future, and it doesn't let them dwell on a past error. So it again comes back to the idea that people will grow. It's not about making them aware of the errors that they made. I mean, if a player throws away the disc, they're going to know that they did something wrong. So berating them for it isn't actually going to get you anywhere from a coaching perspective. Framing that on the future is more positive, to say, you didn't get that this time, or you didn't do it yet, but here's how I think you can do it in the future. So the concept of yet, when it's involved in a team's mental strength, kind of encourages people to keep trying and keep developing. It acknowledges that mistakes were made without allowing those players to mentally black hole spiral down a self-doubt hole, effectively, where they're like, oh, I can't do it, I'm so sorry, I failed, I'm never going to achieve it, and it just spirals on again. But if you frame it on, you can't do it yet, there's the expectation that you will do it next time, and then there's the feedback of, and this is how you do it. So I think that kind of framework of forward thinking is important. Once you get to game day, there's nothing different. It's just implementing all the tools that you've been practicing in training. So maintaining language to make sure that you are focused on the future, not getting mental spiraled out. Keeping feedback on the effort people are putting in, not like oh my gosh, you're so tall, of course you're going to scare that person. It's framing it on, you boxed so well, I can see all the reading, that practice that you've been putting in, that was a great play. Focusing it on the work that the player's been putting in, not their natural abilities. Game day is also a great time to reflect on the goals that you've made as a team. It can help take just a win-loss situation by focusing on, today we're really going to nail those handler resets, or today I want to see these plays implemented perfectly. And also I really like using visualization at the start of games and sometimes in timeouts. It can help center players put them in a more positive mindset, and literally we just sit there and picture ourselves doing amazing things. So I like visualization as a tool. Some people hate it, but I mean, they don't have to stand there with their eyes closed. They can just do whatever they want and other people can visualize. Also just having the team aware of negative self-talk. And that I think is where the concept of yet is important, where people will work towards it and improve when they can, but just reminding players that you believe in them and so they should believe in themselves. On game day, that's probably more important because that's when people are most stressed, and people's mental game is the most important. And this brings us to our last slide of why I think mental strength is actually particularly important. A lot of the things we do as Frisbee players kind of become part of how we behave in our general lives. We spend sometimes a stupid amount of time playing Frisbee and with our teams and with our culture. And so what we do with our teams and the mental strength that we learn with our teams can become the way we do things as a club, moves into the way you do things as a person. This is particularly important if you're coaching younger players, less so for adult teams, and not something I particularly worry about for berries, but if you're coaching school kids, particularly this can be quite important because kids are going to have to prepare themselves for later life where they will have to be their biggest cheerleaders. They will face challenges that they're not ready for. They will have to deal with feedback they don't like. And they might not have that support, but if they already have the mental strength that they've learned through coaching and through playing a sport and through being told, I'm going to push you and I believe that you can achieve, that can actually build a lot of strength and resilience for when they get those same challenges at university or in other parts of life when they have actual jobs and all that kind of stuff. So that's my short rant on mental strength, how I think it is implemented and why I think it's important. If you have any questions, you can ask or spam away. I have my phone at the ready. Ta-da.
Can I just say it on here? Is that allowed? Oh, hello?
I can't see who's talking.
Sorry, it's Tara.
Ah, hello.
Hi. It was just a question. It's like all the way back to the implementation phase of like building a team culture. And you mentioned like some things that Berries does in terms of hill sprints and like eating dumplings together and stuff. How did you like identify what those team culture building things were, or like was that something that just naturally happens? Is that something?
Dumpling eating probably naturally happened.
Obviously.
Other things weren't so natural. Ideally, they form organically. You find things that you all like or that a bunch of you like, and then you just put it. So like dumpling eating, I'll be honest, Cammy really liked dumplings and was happy cooking dumplings. And so I was like, cool guys, we're having dumpling night. Everyone come to mine. We're all eating dumplings. And then we just did that a bunch of times. And then it became a thing. Hill sprints was because I really hate sprinting up hills but think they're beneficial. And it also sounds like an intimidating thing, like, oh, we're a team that does hill sprints. And so people who don't want to push themselves to do hill sprints probably just don't trial for us, which is sad. But it sends people in with an expectation of like, oh, cool, this is what this team stands for, like really grueling fitness stuff, and this is what they're into. And so people come in with a mindset being like, oh, cool, they do hill sprints, I'm going to be pushed physically. But it really can be anything. The recent one that's evolving is berries drink long whites. I'm less supportive of that as a concept, but like, it really it matters less what they are and more that you just get buy-in for them. I'm sure you guys will have a bunch of them if you think of it, and you have just like 3 or 4 people that love doing that. Like Nexus does Mara's grit workouts from hell. Like that's the perfect start. Is you're like, this is our basis. I know Vixen does a lot of wine and cheese, and that's way more classy than we can achieve, but it's quality. So every
That's
team will
just
have
the old players
yeah,
on Vixen.
just the old players. You've got to get all of them into that, John. Wine and cheese is quality.
How do you generate this sort of team culture for a team, like a high school team that has a lot of
Do you have a
turnover
question?
here? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Meg.
Yeah, so like a high school team that has a lot of turnaround year to year, and maybe the leadership changes quite abruptly, or like a New Zealand team where there might be some returning players, but it's a lot of new players, and you don't want there to be kind of a divide between the returning players and the new players. Do you have
Yep.
to that?
I think it's important to select all the players at one point. And because there's normally a new coach, I think it makes it easier to kind of have a new uniform, at least at a New Zealand team level, because there's a new coach. They can kind of set the tone from the start. And they can essentially choose a lot of the things that they want the team to kind of stand for, and things that become bastions of the team. I think things like social training camp, I know the mixed masters team did that, and they built a lot of things out of that kind of situation where you're just hanging out and you're getting to know the people on your team, and you'll naturally build a bunch of things that just kind of define how you feel about each other. And it can stupid chance is a really great way to build things that are your own teams. So I think especially at schools level, that can be a good way, because they often like doing chants or dances, and they can make their own TikTok, like, and then that can be their thing, the unifying whatever it is, just so they have something that like, oh, that's ours, and we all did that together, just to start bonding them. Yeah, ma'am? Unmute.
Sorry, I failed at unmuting. So you mentioned that to do with the growth mindset, you would put them in challenges and potentially have them in a game have 6-on-7 and things like that, or you can only play zone. One of the things you mentioned was that it's really important that they are forced to come up with that in a situation where it was kind of on the fly, I think you mentioned. Would you also give them those opportunities of timeouts, have the time to plan, look at what went wrong and try and improve on that? Or is that something that you'd want to do more as a team focus rather than the small group that was being forced out of their comfort?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in making a small group of the team discuss and adapt, because otherwise within a team you can get people, especially when there's player coaches, you'll get people who, when you get into that breakout session or discuss it as a whole team, they'll naturally lead, and you won't get as many opinions, and you won't, like if Coral and I were on playing in the 6 against a 7 and we had a break, we would consciously not give answers to kind of push other people to find the answers themselves and to think through that and come up with their own adaptive skills. And then once they'd come up with that, we would give opinions on it and try and improve from there. But I think there's a lot of value in, at every level, making players find the answers for themselves, and making people think through it, rather than having the whole team come together and find a solution. But at the same time, if it's a really niggly problem, and they're just failing at it again and again, that's where it can be more supportive to bring the whole team together and discuss adaptive strategies. Any other questions?
A little bit on the sort of, you talk about starting with the team culture and then the goals. And I guess from Blueberries' perspective this year, how much was that a team thing and how much was that like a you and Coral and maybe anyone else that I don't know who does the captaining thing? Like how much were you sat down as a team and said trying to work on the mental toughness, and how much is it like you kind of worked out what your goals would be as leadership and then communicated that with the team?
Yeah, Carl and I, you can pipe up if you want, Carl, but we tend to have our own goals for the team, but don't share those until the teams come up with its own goals, and a lot of the time they end up aligning. So we have a training camp each year where everyone's told they're expected to bring a personal work on and a team goal. And then as a team, we discuss all of those and we come up with what our refined down goals are for the season. And quite a lot of the time, there'll be a lot of overlap in what each person's goals are. This year, mental strength was one that came out really strongly from almost everyone as what they wanted in a team goal. And I think if you have a team where everyone is happy sharing goals and thinking about goals, it's more valuable to do it that way because you get more buy-in. But if you're coaching a schools team where they probably don't even know how to set goals really, or a more junior team, you can talk about like your personal goals for the team as a starting point, and how you think the team should go, and how you would like it to progress, and from that use it as a launching pad for them to think about what their own personal goals are. So I think the less experienced the team, the more you need to guide them on what goals are probably useful, just because they don't know how to set goals. Miriam?
So you were saying that it was, I'm going to forget the words, but you could be supportive without, like being a social coach, just be happy they turned up. Can you do much as a social coach, as someone who's just trying to get them there and participating and having fun, to still improve their mental toughness so that they're more likely to enjoy the games when they are tougher games? Like how do you find that balance?
Completely. Yeah, I think the ideal in every situation is to aim for that wise type coaching where you have both the demanding and the support. I think social coaching often tends to be not demanding just because people get so happy that they've turned up. If you have the ability to also put in a bit of training time with them, being demanding is great. Examples in a social context are putting an inexperienced player into the handler space when they've never played handler before. They'll be way outside their comfort zone. They'll be terrified. But the key thing to do is then you sit next to them and you say, anytime you're stressed, you look at me, I will get open for you. And if they completely fluff it, you blame yourself. I'm sorry, I wasn't more open for you. I should have made that easier for you. You did great. And next time you've got that 100%. So in a social context, I think there's definitely still a place for wise coaching. It's just the level that you push to for demanding is different. So it's demanding to be like, you pick up the disc, as opposed to where's the 10th sprint after you've almost bombed. Any other questions? Gnomes is deep in contemplation phase.
I have a question. You've mentioned some tips you can use for like junior athletes and school teams. Is there anything you would actually recommend for other, let's say, the masters teams? Like just thinking that they might be stronger mentally, but at the same time there might be stronger personalities as well, which could clash more. So yeah, just do you have any recommendation? Like what is like a good tactic?
Yeah, I think it is definitely harder to build mental strength sometimes in older teams because people are kind of happy in their own mental state. They're comfortable, and sometimes they're less willing to be pushed outside their comfort zones because they've been playing for so long and they have quite a broad comfort zone and they have a lot of things that they can do within that comfort zone. So they see it as less necessary than a newer player who's just trying to pick up a lot more skills. But I still think at a master's level, mental strength training is really important, because a lot of people in master's teams, including myself, have never actually been to Worlds. And so they'll be going for their first time to a competition, competing against players who have had mental strength training for decades and played 6 to 10 Worlds already, and are going to be at a very different mental state to what they're at. So they're going to have to be prepared to push harder than they could expect. Age in Frisbee isn't necessarily reflective of experience in some situations. So I think it's definitely still really important for masters teams as to how to deal with stronger personalities in masters teams, because they definitely exist. Having a really strong coach can be a great starting point. You just do what the coach says. They sometimes have to be a bit more on the pushing the player's side of their own mental strength that they've built up over time. But then they also have to be a bit more ready to pick up the pieces, because when a masters player falls apart, it pulls apart mentally. It can be a lot of work to put them back together, I think. So I think that the principles are the same. Have high expectations and support people to be pushed outside their comfort zone. And then I think the peer pressure of everyone else on the team can be really strong if there are other people who are really well respected on that team, and who have, for example, Jana played a whole bunch of Worlds, very well respected on Masters. She can be the person that pulls everyone else up by their bootstraps if they are slacking when Liam tells us to do more. Go, Jana, I
Crystal's
believe in you.
way older than I am. Sorry, someone else was going to make a comment?
Oh, sorry. Janelle, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, it's not so much a question, but just if you can give some advice. When working on mental strength for people, like personally, I feel like, and most people, like other people might also feel the same, it's always a lot easier to encourage others and always be positive to push other people. But I find that, you know, it's really easy to be negative on yourself. Like when you're trying to push yourself from that comfort zone to that growth zone, without like putting yourself down, that's always quite tricky, I feel like. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so to some extent your team needs to be there for you, and that's where that supportive team base is really important, and it should be expressed within teams that if you are ever struggling mentally or struggling to push yourself, that your team should be there, be open to those conversations and be willing to help as needed. As to personally how you deal with that, that's really tricky. Your own mental space is the hardest to deal with. I like to do it by setting myself goals to push a little bit harder each time. So sprints, if I did it, sprint set in this time last time, trying to do it faster this time, but then giving myself permission to fail. Just acknowledging that setting yourself goals, you have to permit yourself to not achieve those goals at the same time, and just know that as long as you are working towards them and you are still on the right path, that is essentially fine. Otherwise, back to visualization. I really like visualization, making your own highlights reel, sitting there and thinking about, this is what I've been working on, this is what I want to achieve, and now I'm going to picture myself just making the perfect backhand huck to this space, or a really clean handler reset, or Camuso's chicken wing, whatever it is that you've been visualizing, just putting yourself in a positive mindset by having a highlight reel and watching yourself do those things. And then, yeah, a lot of it is on your team to pull you up if you're mentally struggling and say, next time you've got that, or I believe in you. And I know from my coaching experience, I spend a lot of time checking in with every player on my team and asking them how they're feeling, so I can try and keep track of that. I don't always get it, but I think as a coach, it's important to check in on players' mental health, particularly during games. Hopefully that answers.
Cheche here. Do you have any tips on building mental strength for a social team that is losing every game in a social league?
Yeah, goal resets are really good for that. So instead of, yeah guys, we're gonna win this game, when you fully well know you're about to lose it, going in as like, okay guys, today I want this person to throw a long throw, just go for it, try your best, and when it comes up, you know what, it'll probably be trash, but be like, yeah, you had a great go at that, next time I want to see you go further. A lot of enthusiasm, all of the support in the world, and then pushing them to something that's just outside their comfort zone, I think still applies. And then if you have those kind of moments where you're celebrating, it doesn't really matter what the score is because you're achieving your own goals. So it takes the focus off the fact that you're losing a social league and puts it on, we're achieving these other things. And that's what we set out to do. So we feel like winners, even if the score doesn't make us look like winners.
Cool, thanks for that.
Any questions from Nick in the background? Oh, chat. Miriam's posted a thing to the Zoom chat if anyone feels like a read. Cool.
I'm just curious as to who macadamia nut is.
Hazel.
Ah, that makes sense.
She consistently has a new nut each Zoom chat. But great question, because the first few Zooms we got confused as well.
I have another question. What if, as a coach, you try to be supportive, but your players don't approach you? How can you help them? Are there maybe like there's not a good communication between you and the players?
That's difficult. Ideally, players feel comfortable talking to their coach about stuff. Strategies for that, making sure you reiterate frequently that if there are any questions or any concerns, please talk to the appropriate people, giving multiple avenues for discussions if needed. So if you think that people might not be comfortable, like Coral and I do that, is that there's two people to talk to. Meg, as a spirit captain, you are a third option. So if people have a problem with me, they can talk to you, or with Carl, they can talk to me. And so there's more than one avenue, and hopefully people are comfortable with that. But otherwise, ideally having a tight enough team unit where there is a feedback option through somebody else in the team. Oh, Kelly says buddy system. Yes, buddy system is a great idea. If you have any concerns, talk to your buddy about it, and then you can work with your buddy to escalate it if you need to, or you can resolve with me. Spies. Jana says spies. Spies would definitely work. I think bugging all team members so that you know exactly what they're saying at all times is a really good way to work out their mental state. You just need the equipment. But yeah, an eye in the sky person taking team temperature is a really useful role. Finding someone to be that eye in the sky can be more difficult. But yeah, multiple points of contact in case people are not comfortable giving feedback to one person in particular. But at the end of the day, if people don't want to give you feedback, it's very hard to elicit it from them.
Vixen's one season just did an anonymous survey, like mid-season survey. How are things going? Feel free to rant. What do you like? What do you don't like? Do you want us? We had a couple of ideas. Would you like? So we shared those. Do you want to do this from these trainings this point forward? And so people could totally feedback. Obviously, when you get that feedback, take it with a grain of salt, because you'll get that mixed bag of everyone's loving it, the other half are hating it, and nobody wants to do. Half don't want to do the new ideas, and half really do. And so you have to be review that with a filter, and then keep your own goals and objectives for the team in mind when you review it. But then people feel heard, which is good.
And Jana's raised a really important point there, is that if you're going to ask for feedback, your team needs to be comfortable that you will review that feedback objectively and not be offended by it, be able to take it on board and adjust. The hardest way to get feedback out of a team is if they think you actually won't care about their opinions, that you aren't going to change anything, or that you'll be offended and overreact if the feedback is given. So coaching a that makes it clear that you will react appropriately to feedback is important, but I don't know how you create that other than just by appropriately reacting again and again. Miriam says respected people are often really good to talk to if there are more experienced, I guess, players in a team. Yeah, I agree. They can be a useful touch point, kind of a medium between newer or more nervous players who don't necessarily want to talk directly to coaches and captains. Tara.
Hi, this might be a bit like niche. I'm not really sure if it falls into like the competitive realm, but like just say for a uni team, like there's often a balance between like socialness, like being social and being competitive. Do you think that there's like, I don't know, should in like the goal setting and the team building and everything, should there be like a separation? I don't know, like do you address the fact that there's a huge social element involved, or do you just kind of be like, no, we're just gonna like look at the competitive stuff and like not talk about the social stuff, like that's completely separate? I don't know if that question makes sense, but like,
yeah, it makes sense. I will always go for talk about everything, because the problem if you don't and you just talk about the competitive side where there's a large element that are just there for social, is you go to that graphic of the people rowing the boat in the opposite direction, and then you get to uni games and half the boat is rowing towards the pub and half the boat is rowing towards a responsible bedtime. And then you end up combusting at not great times. So it's important at the start of a season to set out, yes, we want to have fun, but not at the expense of winning, or yes, we want to win, but not at the expense of having fun. And essentially, you got to get everyone to buy into one of those two. Otherwise, you're going to have people rowing in different directions the whole season, and it will create a lot of animosity. if it's not discussed early.
Thank you.
Yeah, on that, I suppose as well, I've been watching a lot of, there's an American group, Northwest Youth Ultimate, who are doing coaching sessions like this and putting them on YouTube. And one of them is about goal setting. And she said that her team's goal, one of their goals, was to be weird, which has nothing to do with winning Ultimate, has nothing to do with how they're playing on the field. It's sort of similar to what Janelle's talking about, I guess, with creating your in-group. Part of their in-group identity was that they were weird. So their goal was just to do weird stuff all the time. And apparently they really did. And she gave some examples. So sort of you can even have a goal around how social you want to be. And that can address it.
Sorry, I think I froze up through part of that, but I think the gist of it was being weird can be a really cool team thing as well. And it's just one of the many ways you can decide to unite as a team around different concepts. Unless I've frozen now. No? Okay, cool, let me. Everyone was just real still for a bit there. Chill.
Are there any final questions? Cool. Thank you, Janelle. That was great. I think the next one's in a week and a half, I think I settled on, or 2.5 weeks, something like that. So we're going to do these quite regularly, alternating between Tuesdays and weekends. And so if you have a topic you would like to discuss, please let me know. It can be anything that you think that you can link to coaching in some way. Or Miriam's going to do a Spanish lesson is the alternative.
Yes.
Yeah, by all means, reach out to me if you are interested in.
If you do have any other questions after this, feel free to message me. And if you want any reading material on mental strength, I have a long reading list of recommendations. Oh, I've frozen.
Thanks, Janelle.
Thanks, everyone.